I was a student at Illinois Tech. I had 2 years of college in the Chicago Public's high colleges, and I uh, applied for a position with the Army Ordnance Department at Illinois Tech, and after completing the course uh, at the Tech there, they sent us out to. I was sent to the Thor Washing Machine Company in Cicero, Illinois, as an inspector for the Army Ordnance Department uh, on 55 and 88 millimeter shells, and I was there for about 6 to 8 months. But I was all alone. I'd come home in the evening, and I would go into the hockey's pool room on Springfield and Roosevelt Road where we lived. I played pool with guys that were 70 years old. All my friends were in the Army, got inducted in or drafted. And one day I came home from the office and I got so disgusted that I took the bus downtown to the post office and took the Air Force exam, of course, with 3 years of college math and all that. I had no trouble passing the exam, and now I had the biggest problem to get the Army Ordnance Department to release me. They spent a lot of money on us, training us to be inspectors for them, but after about 3 months of arguing and fighting with them, I finally said to them, "Look, I'm not going to go back. I won't come to work. What, put me in jail?" And then I had to get it released from the draft board. My mother signed right away, but I finally got a release, and they took about 6 months for the Army to call me up. And we traveled to Shepherd Field in Texas and for our basic training. And after that, they were shipping us to California and to be classified pilot, co-pilot, or navigator. And on the way there, they found that they didn't have room for us at the classification center, so they detoured us to Texas Tech, and they put us up in dormitories for 3 months before they could find space for us at the classification center. So I spent another 3 months at the classification center, we had a ball. It was beautiful, living in a dormitory and right next to the girls' dorm, and we had a ball there. And anyway, after 3 or 4 months, they got room for us, and we went into in boxcars actually, and right to Santa Ana, California, to the classification center. And of course, at the classification center, everybody wants to be a pilot. One cadet refused this classification of about 1,000 of us, me. So they sent me back in the back of the room till about 7 o'clock at night. And what they did is they were trying to get me to be a navigator because of my college math, and I was a perfect candidate, and they were short navigators. And they made me feel like Benedict Arnold after they got through with me. Actually, the lowest rank officer on this board was a full colonel, and I was nothing but an aviation student. I wasn't even a private. I was an aviation student. So finally, I'd accepted the navigation. But after that, I was really happy I accepted navigation.
So initially, you had your heart set on being a pilot.
Everybody has fun.
To be classified for duty as a navigation officer, to you, was somewhat of a disappointment.
Well, it wasn't disappointment because what I was trained for that is in the college, and it's strictly in logarithms and mathematics, and you have to apply yourself. And I had no trouble. In fact, we used to get examinations, and the rest of the cadets would put me in. They steal the exam, and they would put me in a room, and I'd have to work the exam for them. But anyway, it was good. We had a lot of fun and a lot of training. We spent 6 months in training there, and then 2 years of training in flying, and we'd go to classrooms every day and fly all night, you know. But we never flew in the training sessions more than 200 miles in any one direction. And after about 6 months, we had finished our training, and then what happened, they were short navigators, and they sped up the course. They doubled the course so you get double time on the academics, and then we'd go to school all day long and fly at night, and it was really hard. And a lot of the guys cracked up because they couldn't take the pressure. And by June the 10th, 1944, we graduated. And the night before graduation, I got to tell you this story. One of the cadets, and if we'd have caught him, we'd have killed him, decided that we were not going to get up for reveille. And we learned the hard way that in the armed forces, you never have to do anything you don't want to do, but they can sure make you wish you had. We didn't get up for reveille the night before. That morning, they made us put on GI shoes that we had never worn. We wore officers' uniforms all through cadet training, and they put us on a 30-mile forced march, June the 10th in San Marcos, Texas, 100 degrees in the shade. The next day, our graduation parade looked like the Spirit of '76. You never saw such cripples marching. I had blisters on my feet like this. You wore a brand new pair of shoes, you know. So, but from there, we took a 2-week leave, and I was sent to El Paso, Texas, to join where they assembled crews, pilot, navigators, gunners, and everything assembled to go overseas. And when I got to El Paso, Texas, I met, that's the first night I was there, I met Thomas J. Sobieski, the pilot who I flew all my missions with, and the crew. And they had a problem. They were ready to ship out, and their navigator got in a panic attack of appendicitis, and they talked me into volunteer to go with them. There's another thing you never do. You never volunteer. But I did. And that night they put me in a navigation trainer, and I flew a perfect mission. I was in there for 24 hours, and they finally okayed me to leave. So from there, we went to Topeka, Kansas, and where we picked up a brand new B-24 Liberator, the B-24 bomber. And we spent a week flying around the area of Topeka, Kansas, going down the railroad tracks that we knew the heading, get to take the compass and just the compass for the errors in the compass. So we knew if we were flying at, say, 90 degrees, and if we had to fly 3 or 4 degrees off to fly 90, we knew the compensation for the compass. And we spent a week taking the bugs out of the aircraft, and then we were ordered to take the aircraft to Grenier Field, Massachusetts. Well, any dummy could fly that route. We had light lines all the way, and from there, we flew up to Gander Lake, Newfoundland. And there's where you got the test.
Where you got, explain that.
The test of in the school, in training, we never flew more than 200 miles in any one direction, and we didn't do any celestial in the school. And here we are at Gander Lake, Newfoundland, taking off at midnight to the Azores, 1,800 miles of water. single-engine planes. You're on your own. We took off at midnight, and I'll tell you, if I didn't have a heart attack, I never will.
Let me stop you there because I want to back up and I just want to establish some mindset. Here you are. It's difficult for my generation to really wrap my head around and understand the mindset that you and your contemporaries had when you hear America is at war and it's now my responsibility and my patriotic duty to fight for freedom and to do whatever it takes. Can you just take a little bit of time to help me understand
Well,
what that's all about?
it's the American youth, I guess. I mean, the challenge was there, and the enemy was there, and they attacked us at Pearl Harbor, and we had to defend our country. That was all it is, and it was something we never thought about that really. We just knew that we had to do it. And
before you pick up the story from Newfoundland en route to the Azores, your first time in an airplane, flying an airplane, was in training or was it prior to that?
in training. The first time in an airplane when I was at Lubbock, Texas, they put us in a Piper Cub at a 90 horsepower Piper Cub. And I took off with my with my instructor. I was in the front seat and he was in the back seat. And I was up at about 5,000 feet, and I had one left hand on the throttle and my hand on the stick, and it was roaring like a son of a gun. And the instructor taps me on the shoulder, and excuse me, he says, "You think you're pretty hot shit, aren't you?" I said, "You're right, you're right." He says, "Look down at the highway, and here we are flying. The cars are going, zoom, so going past us like we were standing still." And that was my first experience as being in an aircraft, flying the aircraft.
And flying was something that you always really wanted to do as a youngster?
No, really. You thought about it, but there was no way you possibly could have done it because who had the money to do it, to fly in those days? But when the Air Force came along and the opportunity was there, and I came home from Cicero Avenue, the Florida Washing Machine Company. I had nobody there but my old people. I said, "Well, this is not for me." So I took the exam and passed it, and I'm on my way.
Now, you had mentioned, I just want to make sure I understand the timeline. You had mentioned that Pearl Harbor takes place, and now you are doing everything you can do at this point now to get out of what you were, your current situation, and enter basic training as a member of the Air Force. How long was it? How long were you in basic training?
Well, basic training, the whole thing was almost 2 years.
That's what I thought.
When you start, you just don't go in an airplane and you don't become a navigator overnight. You got to fly the plane. You got to adjust to the altitude. You got to adjust to taking a sextant and shooting a 3-star fix and plotting it and DRing through it with dead reckoning right through it, so you know you're going in the right direction. So.
When you're in basic training, are you always thinking forward, can't wait for this part of it to end so that I can...
You really don't know what's ahead of you. The only thing that you worry about is those wings. Somehow they put those wings up on a flagpole, and they grease the flagpole, and they make it so that the most important thing in your life is to climb that pole to get those wings. Nothing else matters about it. You shut out the world for those wings. We had young men that were football players, athletes, everything in our group, and some of them would crack up screaming and really be put in straitjackets to get him out of there. We had one young man starting to run, screaming, "I'm too young to die," and jumps into a hole where it had nothing but bricks and rocks and iron in it and split his head open. They go crazy. But you had to tighten up and say, well, you want it or don't want it. That's it. And but once you get it, you're in. But then we used to sing a song. They taught us how to fly, and they sent us here to die. But we never thought of it. We say the thing is that you figure it can happen to you. We lost 3,200 bombers in training in World War II, in training before we got overseas. Because some of these pilots that would come over to El Paso, Texas, and join the crews were hotshot pilots. They never flew more than, a single engine, double engine. They put them in a B-24 bomber, and they try to do the same thing with the bomber, and you just can't do it. You can't climb as fast, you can't turn as fast, and once you get into a spin, you don't pull out of a bomber. Nobody's ever pulled out of it. And so it was an experience that you had to want it or not want it.
So you're going through this 2-year stint in training, and you're extremely focused on the job at hand, not knowing what tomorrow brings.
That's right. It's exactly right.
But as a what, 20-year-old?
19 years.
19-year-old, aren't you? You're experiencing homesickness. You're missing what's happening at home. You're missing a girlfriend, possibly.
No, but the morale is built up. The way they build it up, and the way they train you, and the flagpole and the wings, that you don't worry about anything. The only thing you worry about is the wings. Without that, I mean, you'd kill for them. That's what they instill into you.
So now let's get back to where we were. You're taking off from Gander, Newfoundland, 1,800 miles to the Azores.
Yeah.
You're having a heart attack, freaking out, as they say nowadays.
I'll tell you one thing. Excuse me, I shit in my pants. I never flown more than 200 miles in any one direction, and didn't do much celestial navigation at the school. Only time we did celestial navigation was on the ground in training. We knew the location where we were at, the latitude and longitude. We'd shoot 3-star fix, plot them, and see how close we could come to what we knew. And that was our extent of celestial. Now you're flying at about 10,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean. It's midnight, and the only thing you got are the stars and your sextant and your compass, and there's a radio beam that's shooting from the Azores back to us. If a lot of the pilots or the navigators were lazy, and they would home in on that beam, and they didn't have to do any celestial navigation. But there was a drawback to that, to the fact that the Germans weren't stupid either. So they had submarines posted outside the Azores, off the Azores, bending the beam. So in the money cases, the bombers would be following a submarine rather than going toward the Azores. But we took off at midnight, and we got up to altitude. And in school, they taught us if you could plot 3-star fixes an hour, sometimes 2, you're doing good. I've plotted 5. I flew fix to fix to the Azores. In fact, one time I had to get a change of heading, and I had to get up on the flight deck and wake up I had to hit the pilot in the head to wake him up. They had an automatic pilot, and to get a correction of heading. But I worked hard, and when we got about 3/4 of the way there, I gave the pilot an ETA to the base, to the Azores, and about few minutes before my ETA was up, I already had a route planned for a search plan in case I missed the Azores, a square search that I fly 3 minutes and keeps expanding a square search and see if we could find the Azores. But I got up between the pilot and co-pilot. I gave him my ETA to the base, and when it got to be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, there were the crosses on the runway. 0-0 mission. We got down on the ground. The flight officer on the ground took my log and worked it backwards looking for compensation errors. And he couldn't find any. But after that, I could take an aircraft any place.
Jack, tell them about the mechanic.
The who?
The mechanic and the bombs.
What
The
do you-
mechanic that puts the bombs in the planes.
Oh, that's later on, yeah.
So, and so, I just want to talk to you a little bit about this initial journey. Sunrise couldn't have come soon enough, right?
Oh, yeah. We spent the night at the Azores. We had dinner, went to bed, and next morning we took off from there to West Africa, Greenwich Field, West Africa, and that was no problem. I knew the heading, and I put myself 15 degrees off course, so I knew which side of the African coast I was on, and I flew up the coast to Marrakech, West Africa. And we stayed there overnight. And then from there, we flew into Tunis, and then there to Naples, and then to Bari, Italy. And then the effing colonel took that brand new B-24 away from us and gave us an old beat-up one. Now we're in the combat.
So nothing can beat basic training for 2 years is terrific, but nothing can beat what you guys just went through.
The experience is it.
And on top of that, here's a guy, I don't know if you had done that much traveling prior to the Air Force, but now all of a sudden you're getting an indoctrination into what the rest of the world is like. You're in the Azores, you're in West Africa, you're now finding your way to Italy. Are you taking all of this in, or are you just sort of staying in the moment with what's going on?
No, you're just happy to be there and be a member of a group. And that's the main thing. And when we got to the group, would you believe it? After about a week, we were the oldest crew in the group, because they were going down left and right.
And you're becoming aware of this. So
Oh,
now
yeah.
you realize that,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
we're here, but again, we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring.
So we go to critique. We get there, and Colonel Glansberg was my colonel, the guy that took the airplane away from us, and met us and explained what for us to expect, to have a good time, and don't make friends with anybody out here, because chances are they won't last long, because your chances of coming home are 1 in 10,000.
Oh, okay.
And that was the truth. And so we didn't even bother with that. We'd go to, every morning we'd get up and we'd go to briefing, and then the chaplain would say a prayer. We'd run to the planes and take off, and away we went. And you're young, it can't happen to you, and you're fighting it every day of the week. So sometimes we flew 10 days in a row. When they had a maximum effort, you flew 10 days in a row.
At what point did you sit down, sort of take a step back, and write your first letter home?
After every mission, I would count them up, and then I'd say, when we got there, we were supposed to fly 50 missions. And so I'd say 40 more to go, 30 more to go, 20 more to go, 10 to go. But halfway through our missions, they changed the number of missions to 35. but they meant 35 sorties, 35 times over a target completely, and when you flew to 50, if you flew to a mission beyond the point of return of the aircraft, in other words, if something happened to the aircraft and you couldn't get back, they gave you double credit for it. After about a 6-hour mission or 8-hour mission, they gave you double credit. So basically, you could fly if you flew 17 or 18 missions and double credit on most of them, you could go home. I flew 25 sorties and 20 doubles. No, I flew 35 sorties, well, of which 20 were doubles. So I'm credited with 55 missions, 35 missions and 20 double credits, which means I flew I flew 4 times to the Moose Bierbaum oil refinery in Vienna, Austria, which was, and let me say one thing, if Hitler would have had oil, we'd still be fighting him. We'd fly over airfield after airfield after the Ploesti oil fields fell to the Russians, and we knocked it out. We devastated it. We hit it 7-8 days in a row with 1,000-pound bombs in 1,000 planes. We lost heavily. We lost 70% of our bombers over Ploesti, and the same thing over Moose Bierbaum. But we knocked out the oil refineries. For all intent and purposes, the war was over. We would fly over airfield after airfield in Germany and see thousands of Me-109s, Messerschmitts on the ground, and we didn't even go down to strafe them. None of our flyers went down to strafe them.
Unlike your brethren in the army, in the infantry, you're experiencing the war from above.
Oh yeah.
So you're not without your very intense, scary moments from that perspective. But is it different not being face to face with the enemy on the ground?
I tell you, when a Messerschmitt comes in at you with the guns firing and you see the flame and the tracers, maybe it's like seeing the pilots, and it's like being face to face. Believe me, and there's nowhere else to go. I mean, it's something that it's unbelievable what you go through, but you become used to, not used to, you never get used to it, but you get oblivious to it. You don't even think about it. It can't happen to you.
So tell me about that first experience where, I don't know if you necessarily see the whites in their eyes, but your first confrontation with enemy fire, whether it's a Messerschmitt or some other type of aircraft. How do you?
Our bomb runs were about 14 minutes. From the initial point to start the bomb run to the target is about 14 minutes. And it seemed like 50,000 hours, because that 14 minutes you're flying straight and level, no evasive action, nothing. The bomb sight is flying the aircraft. And you got to fly straight and level into the target till bomb's away. And after bomb's away, you're on your own. Get the hell out of here. That's the main thing. And that's the way we figured it, and it was the truth. But
are you constantly looking? I mean, you're searching for visual contact.
Oh, the ground. My job was to get them there to the initial point and through the bomb run and get them home. And that's what I did, And and I was group lead navigator, and my biggest problem with my navigators that I was brought in and trying to teach them and trying to really pound it into their heads that you must know where you're at all times. Because a lot of navigators the lead navigator would set the course, get us there and get us back. But if you had to abort the formation and you don't know, and
Hold that thought. pick up if you had to abort
If
the?
you had to abort the formation and you didn't know where you were starting from, how in the hell are you going to get home? We had some navigators leave the formation and looking for the island of Vis on the Yugoslavia coast, where they had an airstrip there that we could land in there, and then they'd pick us up from Italy, and they'd wind up in Nice, France, because they didn't know where they were at to start with. And so, to give you an example, we were coming back from Munich, and we had one engine knocked off, one engine running away, which we had a feather, which means we set it at attention, straight up and down. But luckily, we had both outboards. And we were at 40,000 feet, and we still had to cross the Alps. And I called Johnny W. Jones, my top-towed gunner. I said, Johnny, how's it looking out there? He said, sir, he said, I don't know how we're looking, but there's some kids on top of the mountains throwing rocks down at us. Because we were going right through the peaks with the Tuskegee Airmen alongside of us. But we cleared the Alps, and we went down into about 10,000 feet, and we got the engine back that was running away, and we came home 2.5 hours late.
So
They
it's one
already
thing
packed
to-
our clothes.
It's one thing to hit your target, everything's fine, 14 minutes, and now you're on your own, and
You gotta get
what's
home.
gonna happen?
You got to get home. That's until you hit the ground at the base, it's not a successful mission. That's all.
So the first experience with enemy gunfire, the first experience where
On my fifth mission, about the fourth mission actually, we flew a mission with another navigator and the crew there to get an orientation mission, so you know what to expect. And I was sitting on the desk. He was navigating, and I said, "What's that black stuff out there?" He says, "Lieutenant, that's flak." I jumped underneath I flew underneath the desk. I didn't know what it was, but they send up barrages of flak over the target that looked like a skyscraper, all metal, as you were running into. And you had to fly straight and level through it. And you had to be lucky that they didn't have your altitude, that's all. And the bombers, our bomber groups, to try to get through, we'd fly, say, a formation of, say, 300 bombers. We'd have 100 in each squadron, and we'd stagger the altitude. One would go at 38, one 35, 140, and if they had your altitude, you just were a dead pork chop. You couldn't, they could shoot. They had plenty of practice sending up those barrages.
And there were circumstances where you would see other American aircraft not make it
Sure.
within your view.
Oh yeah, and you know who they were, and that's it. That's what shook you up more than anything. I got the Distinguished Flying Cross we were flying over Moose Beer Bomb Oil Refinery. We were lead ship, and our wingman got a direct hit into bomb bays, and it went up like a Roman candle. And we went down into a flat spin at 40.
Explain what that is.
A spin with a B-24 bomber just turning, going down. And it's impossible. Nobody's ever gotten out of a flat spin with a Liberator bomber. But luckily, we went through another formation of bombers coming off the targets, and it was like your speedboat going in the water, setting up the wind, so you get turbulence in the air. So we happened to hit that thing, and they gave us a little bit of torque, and we spun out, and we pulled out at 5,000 feet.
So do you suddenly get even more religious than maybe you already are when something like that happens?
I'll tell you. And now, what do? You're out. Here you are alone at 5,000 feet. All your bombers are going back. Well, some of them that they didn't make it, but the pilot starts to holler at me and says, "Jack, what do I do? What do I do?" And I said, "Do a 360, complete turn, so we can get some bearing." I knew the distance to the Adriatic Sea from Vienna. I knew our average ground speed from our aircraft, and I didn't trust my compass. We had no turn bank indicator, and so I said to keep our right wing perpendicular to the mountains, and let's go. And we started going up, and I now climbed to about 14,000 feet because I knew the altitude in the mountains over Vienna there were about 12,000. I wanted to get above them. And we were flying along perfectly until we hit a cloud bank. Now, he has no turn bank indicator. He has nothing. And he starts screaming, "Jack, I can't hold it. I got to let down." I said, 5 more minutes. No, we screaming. He's screaming at me. I'm screaming at him, and I'm hollering 5 more minutes. He says, "I can't hold it." "You got to hold it." We screamed at each other for about 10 minutes, actually. And finally, I said, "Let down." We let down, and our tail skid of our bomber scraped the top of the mountain as we went down into at the Adriatic Sea, the shore. And and I said, now we were okay. I said, "Now do a 360 and line up on these 2 mountains," because I didn't trust my compass. And we split the base wide open. I got the DFC for that.
So a lot of what you're doing now is instinctive.
Oh,
in terms of
you have to do it. That's all. It all comes with experience. After, if it would happen on my 4th or 5th mission, it never would have happened. We'd have never got home. But this way, and I had plenty of experience. I knew how to figure the ground speeds. I knew how to the average ground speed. I knew our areas. I knew the mountains, and that's it.
What is it like before shut-eye? The night after that kind of an experience? Do you lay there and do you relive everything that happened? Do you say a prayer? Do you get to sleep right away? Are you so exhausted?
But I tell you, the good thing about it is that you're so tired. Oh, you think you can't help but not think about it, and a lot of people cracked up, But you come home, I'll tell you, you go to chow and after critique on the mission, and then you hit the sack, and you just can't wait to get in the sack, because flying at high altitude for 8 hours, the flight surgeons will tell you, takes as much out of your body if you did hard labor for 24 hours straight. So you're exhausted, really. And some days we flew 6 and 7 days in a row when they had the maximum efforts.
So you're up the next morning and it's right back to work.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you fly up in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, they wake you up to go to chow and then to briefing.
You're establishing a lot of camaraderie. You certainly
yeah.
understand what others are going through.
Sure.
You're supportive.
Sure.
You can be supportive. You're looking for direction from your superiors. You're looking for a pat on the back.
After every mission, we'd get in the mess hall afterwards for dinner, and if there was a missing table empty, it was sadness. If we all came back, we'd sing the Air Force song. It got me crying. But a lot of them didn't come back.
Yeah. You lose a lot of friends.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But there's a lot of things happen there that Helen said to tell you about what happened. We were in, I think it was in, about July of 44. No, about August, middle of August, I think it was. We're taxiing toward the runways, and we were number 6 ship in line, 6 or 7 ship in line, And the first plane took off, got to the end of the runway and blew up. 5 airplanes blew up. And they started shooting the red flares like crazy to stop the mission. We taxied back to our revetment, and we see everybody running toward another ship. The 6th ship had a hand grenade placed in the nose wheel by the line chief, the head of all the mechanics. The Germans got to him, giving $10,000 in cash for each one he blew up. He caught him, they court-martialed him at 7 o'clock in the morning, shot him at 8 o'clock. But still, 50 men were dead.
Where were you in line?
I was about 2 or 3 ships behind to take off. Well, I didn't have a hand grenade in mine, because our crew chief let nobody near that aircraft.
You get to know your aircraft.
Oh yeah. We came home with 100 holes in our plane one day, and we had a beautiful petty girl on the front end of the plane that I used to kiss every time we took off. We came home one day with 100 holes in that plane. Luckily, it didn't hit a vulnerable spot, and we got back, and the crew chief had to spend 2 nights patching it with tin plate, and rivets. And he got so drunk, he got so mad, he changed the name of the plane to strictly GI, and he put a different picture on there.
What's the story behind the Urgent Virgin?
The Urgent Virgin is just somebody's mind, We had a picture, and we called it Lucky Miss. We had a petty girl on there.
Do you become superstitious when you go through that experience? Do you go through the same protocol as you board your aircraft? Do you have good luck charms? What?
Not really, no. I mean, everybody's got a job to do. I like the navigator. The navigators are the ones that probably never cracked up. You know why? Because we were working from an hour before the plane took off till an hour after the plane hit the ground afterwards. Because we had to plan the mission, we had to set up our routes, we were on oxygen all the way from the minute we got in the aircraft till we came down. And so we were continuing. The ones that cracked up mostly were the gunners. The gunners were sitting there like this. And they're for 8 to 9 hours. One day, I'll give you an example. One day, one of our gunners opened up on a Tuskegee Airman. He didn't want to, but his hands froze on the trigger as they went by, and he shot him, but he didn't hit him. That night at dinner, see, every one of our planes had tail fins that were marked. They knew our position. They knew where we were located in Italy. We had about 17 different airstrips there. They came over our area at dinner time and blew over every tent in our area, and then they spun up over our mess hall, up in the air. Here, you assholes, this is what a P-51 looks like, and gave us a lesson in aircraft identification.
So you respected them even more after that?
Oh yeah, sure. We as the officers of our crew, each one of us got a bottle of Canadian Club every month for combat whiskey. We were supposed to take a drink after every mission. None of us drank. We were 19 years old. I didn't. First of all, when I was home, I couldn't afford to drink. Number 2, I never drank. So we had around 30 bottles of booze in our tent, waiting for a Christmas party. And so when they escorted us from Munich all the way back home over the Alps, we took 7 or 8 bottles of Canadian Club over to their mess hall and their officers club, and we donated it to them. Man alive, we were their guests for 2 days, because those bottles were going for $1,500 a bottle at the black market out there. All you had was that red wine made by the Italians that they do with their feet, you know. But it was something to see.
So you have, you come home with significant recognition for bravery, for some of the things that took place in specific missions. Just share some experiences, some things that resulted in the issuance of a medal. What kind of stands out?
Well, mostly for us, the navigators, is you got Distinguished Flying Cross, like I said to you, bringing home plaque, a plane at abort the formation. I had to abort the formation probably 4 different times, and every time I brought that plane home. All alone, didn't get lost. I came right to the base, you know. And it's amazing that that you have that instinct to do it, you know. But I'll tell you, I got the one story I got to tell you though. This is a story that it's on my 5th mission. I was flying with Colonel Glansberg, and here I'm a 19-year-old second lieutenant. He's a 42-year-old command pilot from West Point, and probably one of the top pilots in the Air Force. And we're coming down through Yugoslavia from Vienna, and I called him. I said, "Colonel, you're not flying my heading." He said, "Son," I'm a son now. He's 42 years old and a full colonel, and I'm a second lieutenant. I got a map in my lap. I got a direct course line to the base. Besides that, I got a date with a hot nurse. I said, "Colonel, you're going to get our ass shot off," because the Germans had flak guns on railroad cars in Yugoslavia, and they'd move them every night. Hell, they knew where we were going before we knew. They knew our course before we knew. And I said, "You're going to get our ass shot off." He said, "Don't worry about it, son." I took all my maps, put them in my jacket, zipped up my jacket, put on my flak coat and everything, got up behind his coffin seat like this. No sooner I get up there, here comes the flak. He starts screaming, "Pilot the navigator, pilot the navigator." I don't want to swear. "You're the effing navigator, you son of a bitch," just like that. "You get us out of here." He says, "Don't argue me, get me out of here." So I gave him some evasive action that I had. Now we get back to the base. We go to critique. Not a word is said. The mission is successful. Everything is fine. We go to dinner. Not a word is said. He gets up from dinner, and he looks around the room, and he hollers Schwartz at the top of his voice. And when he said that, everybody hushed. "I want to see you in my quarters now." I go, "Uh-oh, I'm getting court-martialed," because a second lieutenant doesn't tell a colonel to go F himself. No way. I walked in behind him, and honest God, I was shivering. And he turns around, puts his arms around me, and says, "Son, I had that coming. Thank you and good night." 3 weeks later, I became a first lieutenant, and 3 months later, I became a captain. And when I finished my missions, he says, "Jack, now it's Jack, no more son. Stay with me 3 more months, I'll make you a major." I said, "F you, send me home."
What else? Share another story.
Uh-huh. That was good, I'll tell you.
How about the one that made you change your name?
Oh, yeah. We got overseas. The same colonel was telling us what to expect. Like I said before, our chances of coming home are 1 in 10,000. Have a lot of fun. Don't worry about a thing. Just worry about your missions. And he said, besides that, are there any Jewish boys here? I said, yes, sir. We're about 3 or 4. He says, from now on, you are a Protestant. Give me your dog tags. I'm going to give you new dog tags with a P on them for Protestant. And I want you at services every Sunday to familiarize you with the services. I don't want any of my boys going down over Germany and being tortured. That was, in fact, I had my dog tags here, but my grandchildren lost them for me.
And the Tuskegee?
But the Tuskegee Airmen, if it wasn't for them, and with that big bird, is you all in trouble, we wouldn't be here today.
And you mentioned that you still have a relationship.
Yeah, in fact, I'm having him for lunch in the next week or so. Milt Williams, he's one of the few Tuskegee Airmen that's left. They're all dead. In fact, I'm the only one alive on my crew. They're all gone. I turned 90 last week.
Do you attend reunions?
We did 1 or 2 of them, I think. And we went California and one in Colorado. In fact, my bombardier, who was my best friend, we met at Pebble Beach. And Mark and my son Chucky were there. And when my bombardier came around and saw me, I saw him coming across the parking lot at the Pebble Beach. We jumped at each other. They thought we were a couple of homos, and we spent almost 4 hours, 5 hours talking and like that. They all went to bed.
Having lived through it, does it encourage you or discourage you from watching documentaries and specials and reading books and looking back?
I for about almost 50 years, I didn't even mention it. Now the kids are coming out of school, asking questions, bringing back memories, and now they don't let you alone, And you see the books that are been written now, but what's the name of that book again, huh? The one that
World War II?
Broken.
I'm broken.
Yeah.
Broken?
Broken, yeah.
Broken.
Is that it?
Yeah, a book that read and documents the fact that over 3,000 bombers were lost in World War II in the States in training. And if you all you have to do is go to El Paso, Texas, and see the airport there and see all the crosses on the mountain where the bombers ran into it, because these hotshot pilots, they flew nothing but single engines. They put them in a B-24 bomber, and they tried to get up over the runway, over the mountains on the runway going west, and they hit the mountain every time. You're supposed to go around and go up, but that's it. But it's all that stuff is coming back, and it's like it happened yesterday,
So it was difficult for a long time. For 50 years, it was difficult to get back into that mindset and to sort of relive that. And now you kind of got a different perspective.
Oh, yeah. When I first got back there, came home, we'd go to the Chicago Stadium for a basketball game or a hockey game. I'd look up at the sky, up at the lights, and I'd see pictures in the lights where of fellow friends of mine that went down, and I had headaches, and I wouldn't sleep nights. I went to the doctors, and they checked my eyes. Everything was fine. I checked. Finally, they said, you better go see a psychiatrist. And I said, that's all it is. I'll cure it myself. And I'd go to the stadium and I'd stare at it, and I'd dare the face to come up. It's You can't say that, with all that death around you and all that, horrible stuff going on, and that it can't affect, it affects you.
So when you experience that and you come out of that and you come home safely and
Yeah,
you
that was-
go on with your
that
life and you sit here today and you're surrounded by your grandchildren and your family,
And they killed them.
it must make you feel like you can do anything.
You thank God for the support, that's all.
Tell the story about the mechanic. The mechanic?
Yeah, I did.
Tell
Yeah,
that
we
story.
talked about that.
Oh, you told him? Oh, okay.
What
About
other
the bombs?
stories have sort of permeated the family? What are some of the other headlines that we'd like Jack to
I'm trying to remember.
embellish?
I know.
The family is the support and the recognition. Like I said, when I got the French Legion of Honor, that was and then how in the heck we ever finished those, I'll never know. How we got off the ground, how we landed and got out of there behind the German lines.
So it must be tremendously, it must be an indescribable sort of feeling for you to have your family view you as exactly what you were, a real life hero.
I tell you, this last when we had golf outings honoring my son Chucky at the Merit Club this last weekend, and they had a major from West Point there, and he talked about me for about, it's 45 minutes, and it's the first time it's really happened like that from a man like that, and telling what the experiences were and all that, and it's amazing. And my son, who never really, I know he knew what I was doing, and he knew how I felt about the Air Force and my medals and all that, and he really come up with, my dad had all these things.
We can read about, people like you and what you experienced. We can watch things on television, but nothing replaces what we're doing right now.
We were bombing a airfield in Vienna, Austria, and as we're getting on the IP for the bomb run, and the bombardier has got the target in sight on the bomb site, and bomb bay doors open, and bombs away, and none of the bombs drop. They're froze up on the releases in the bomb bays. So we're going to go around, and as we do a 45-degree turn to come around, and the vibration shook the bombs loose, and the lead ship bombed at a 45-degree angle. Took out, the bombs went out, but they ruined the bomb bay doors. Every ship behind us bombed on ours, which they never should have done, because in a 45 they had to know something was wrong. And so we come around, and and out of, I think it was 50 bombers we had there, and then the bombers, every one of them had bomb bay doors ruined. We get back to the base, and the picture showed we wiped out a complete area of, like our forest preserves here, maybe 20 miles in square. The bombs really split over every place. And we go to critique, and the colonel is pissed off, and he's screaming at at the, not the lead ship bomber, but at the bombardiers behind us should have used their head, but they shouldn't have bombed on us. And so they took credit for the mission away from us. About 3 days later, after another mission, we're coming back from another mission, and all of a sudden I see the general's car and the colonel's car following us. I said, what in the hell did we do now? It so happened that we knocked out the entire personnel of the German base who were camouflaged in the forest preserves, and the Germans knew how our intelligence found out about them being in there, and they had nobody to fly their aircrafts or any mechanics or anybody. So they made us a party and gave us back the credit for the mission. That was what she was talking about.
So through all of this, were there were missions that we could put under the category of the scariest mission, the mission that where you thought you just wasn't, you weren't going to come home, a mission that for whatever reason was the most memorable. Can you sort of talk about some of those?
Well, we knew if we flew to Ploesti, if we flew to Bleckhammer, if we flew to Berlin, if we flew to the oil refineries, those were highly fortified, and we knew we would have plenty of losses. And so that's when the chaplain would spend more time with us and praying for us as we went out. So, but it's you got to take the milk runs with the tough ones. That's all. We used to call the bombing in Yugoslavia, where there had very little flak. It was a milk run, Or we bombed Trieste, Italy. It was a milk run. We bombed the submarine pens in Trieste at the head of the Adriatic Sea. Trieste, Italy. We bombed Greece too. They had the submarine pens in there, and the German U-boats and all that shit. So it was wherever they told us to go, we went. Headquarters would call in every midnight, and it was up to me and a couple of the senior navigators that would stay up at midnight, and get the report from headquarters on our target, and we'd have to completely set up the mission. And they give us our time to target, and we had to work it backwards to get the planes off the ground, rendezvous and everything. Another thing, rendezvousing. We would rendezvous 1,000 airplanes over the Adriatic Sea on a maximum effort day, and we never had an accident. They took off from 17 to 20 different airstrips in southern Italy, and we never had one accident in the rendezvous, which was unheard of.
Most of your missions, I mean, these were daytime missions, a lot of them at night?
No. We flew strictly daytime.
Strictly daytime?
The English flew in nighttime missions. We flew every one of our missions were daytime.
Circumstances where the weather made a difficult mission even worse.
Oh, yeah. There was no turning back. Once you went, like I said before, the lead ship flies straight and level, and the wingmans go at a 45-degree angle and hope we can reassemble when you come back through. And then the Germans, they're not dummies. They were waiting for us after we come out, and we're just stragglers, man. They love stragglers because a single bomber, is no match for fighter planes. And the Colonel Glansberg, I got to tell you about him. He was, I think, the greatest pilot that ever lived. That man flew tail gunner of the lead ship. He'd fly co-pilot of the tail end ship of our formation. He flew a P-51 fighter plane, and he spotted our formation, screaming at us to fly a tight formation so we'd have fighter power. The closer we were together, the better firepower we had. he only took credit for a mission every 30th day or 28th day when our group led the Air Force. Then he made me fly with him. Now, I almost made my pants when I was a group lead navigator for 1,000 planes. But anyway, while he was with us, we had the highest amount of bombs on the targets with the least amount of casualties. And
Would you know your success rate in terms of hitting the target immediately after you drop the load, or would you have to wait for the critique?
we had pictures, and the pictures showed actually came into the critique. We were, and when they took out the Bombay doors, well, we heard about it for a week before they they found out the truth of it.
So these critiquing sessions,
The bombardiers didn't do a good job. They heard about it, maybe.
and you'd feel it for several days thereafter. You would lament the
Oh
critique.
yeah. Then we'd cuss out the bombardiers, and I'll tell you one thing: when they took credit for the mission, they wanted to kill some of the bombardiers because you should know better than when you're in a 45-degree angle to drop a bomb.
Tell me about leave, spending time in Italy.
Well, I came down from a mission, that mission that we pulled out at 5,000 feet, bleeding from the nose to mouth and the ears. And after that mission, they sent our whole crew to the Isle of Capri for a week, R&R. And we lived in hotels, and the Isle of Capri was beautiful, untouched by war. WFI Frank, what's his name? Some actor captured it without firing a shot, and we spent a week there, and my whole crew had a ball, and I was carried there on a stretcher. the Italian nurse who was taking care of me says, Jack, how come you not like the rest of my Americana boys? I couldn't do nothing. I was weak as a kitten. It should happen now.
Usually you're carried out of there on a stretcher.
No, I recuperated, and I was able to get on that little boat that they flew, and they drove us there from Naples to the Isle of Capri.
Did you visit Italy subsequent to your experience in the war?
No. I planned to, but you never get to go. I don't know why, but.
What do you think that would be like? What do you think it would be like to go?
Oh yeah, I'd like to go back to Cherignola, Italy, where the woman who took care of our clothes and her son. We took care of her son. And we fed him and gave him a job at the base, and she did our laundry for us and all that. But they were good to us in the town. But there was a lot of fascists in the town too that were on the outskirts, and if one of our airmen or one of our soldiers would stray off and go looking for some stuff in there, they'd hang him up by the balls. I mean, they'd castrate him.
So now let's back home. We're familiar with the newsreels, and everybody's sort of up to speed on what's taking place as the war is unfolding. Are you aware of what's happening, in terms of the world at large?
Sure, I read about it and have an opinion on it, but we leave it to the pros. That's all. I mean, what else can you do?
But I mean, during your experience, when the war is going on, are you so focused on your particular mission that you don't really know what's taking place?
No, we're strictly on our job. Our job is the most important thing. Like I said before, our job basically was the oil refineries, because that was the engine that kept them going. Heck, we'd fly over like I said, we'd fly over airfield after airfield, and our fighter planes didn't even go down to strafe them. And what happened at the Bulge? 5 days. We couldn't get over to bomb them, and yet they were stuck there. They had no oil. They were going for the oil, and we destroyed the oil. And they were stuck there. They got annihilated there because they couldn't move.
Before we started, you were sharing a story, you brought out the metal, and you were sharing the story about the gasoline tanks.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about that.
It was the Fifth Air Force at Lyon, France, and the partisans. The Air Force was out of ammunition, out of 100-octane gasoline, and they were no food. Everything was gone, and the Germans were ready to attack on 3 sides. And Colonel G got the idea to strip down our bombers and act like supply planes, and took out the bomb bay doors and the bomb bay racks, took out the guns, everything, even everything that would get out of there, any kind of weight was taken out of the aircraft, and we flew with pilot, co-pilot, and navigator, 3-man crew, and loaded the waste with 100-octane gasoline, drums as many as we can get in there, overweighted the plane like crazy, and filled the ceiling up to the ceiling from the gas tanks, from the gas drums, with 100-octane, not with 50 millimeter, no, 50 caliber machine gun bullets, and the K rations and food that we could get in, as much as we could get in on every crack in the waist. And the bomb bays were loaded with, the racks were taken out, and we loaded with 100,000 and 500-pound bombs, even 100-pound, how many bombs we could get in there. Normally, we carry about 1,000 bombs. We had over 25 to 30 bombs in there. The weight was fantastic. And we took off with pilot, co-pilot, and navigator only up out of Italy, across into the middle of the Mediterranean, up the French coast to Lyon, and got in under the German radar. If they'd have caught us, if they'd have found out about it, one plane could have knocked out 100 bombers, because we had no guns, no nothing. But we got out of there before they knew we were there, and we did it twice.
So just wheels up at that point.
Oh yeah.
Thank God.
And we still had to get up to 12,000 feet because of the mountains.
Looking back on your experience, is there something that you have this mindset going in, you don't know how it's going to unfold or whether you're even going to return safely. But as you look back now, 50 or 70 years later, was it what you expected it to be going in, or was it an experience that you just couldn't wrap your head around before you even...
First of all, you're all of 20 years old now. You don't even know what to expect, and you got to have the idea. If you don't have the idea that it can happen to you, you're going to crack up. And that was, most of us thought it can happen to us. And so you had to be lucky, that's all. Oh, who can say it? 2 planes are floating around, flying straight and level, and all of a sudden just boom. And ours just knocked off into a spin.
So you have a certain amount of confidence in your ability, and your schooling and your education, and then you have a certain amount of confidence in your aircraft.
And the crew.
And your crew.
Our crew were like this. We were a family. One for all and all for one. Yeah. We had a situation when we were coming in, and our ball turret was damaged, and our gunner was in there, and we were coming in for a landing, and we couldn't go around because we were flying on fumes as it was, and 4 of us had to get up into the waist and get him out of there so we could land. Because if he, with that ball turret down and you land, he's a dead pork chop. We had to get it up. Well, I tell you, we fought that thing. But that was the thing, you fly by the seat of your pants, really, doing what you think is the best. And if you're lucky, you're lucky. If you're not, then you're dead.
So you took off from Newfoundland on what day, and you came back on what day? How long was this period?
Oh, it's about 9 months.
When you hear that the war is over, where are you?
I was in Texas, near Dallas, Texas, outside of Dallas, and at the base and you know one thing, we didn't know what to do. We were just stunned, because we were ready to go to California to train in B-29 bombers. Oh, and I'll tell you one thing. We flew into Santa Ana, California to be told what was going to happen before we went back to Texas, and we taxied up to a B-29 bomber. Honest to God, we felt like we were in a Piper Cub. I never felt so small in my life. It's like a 1-bedroom apartment against a skyscraper. It was.
So you were given you came home before the end of the war.
Oh yeah.
And so tell me about that, when somebody comes knocking on your door and Jack, thank you, it's time to go home.
No, it wasn't that way. We flew back to Texas, and we were going to be flying out to Santa Ana, California to be in the B-29 bombers.
To retrain.
And it's a big difference, And when it ended, all they did was send us to Santa Ana, Alamo. Where's the Alamo? In San Antonio, and to be separated. I had my choice if I wanted to stay in or go.
What was it like then when you returned stateside now for the first time in 9 months?
Yeah.
Having dodged the bullet.
You don't know what to think. You're all of 23 years old. You're 24 years old. You're happy-go-lucky. You thank the Lord for everything, and you have nothing.
And in the back of you're going to be retrained. You're going to be going back.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, we really didn't know what to expect in Japan, except we were told that we would lose millions of men if we had to invade Japan. And thank God for Harry Truman. He had the balls to drop the bomb. And anybody that says that he shouldn't have dropped it, I'd like to meet him, and then you weren't waiting to go to Japan,
So a tremendous sense of relief.
Oh yeah, when you got home. But then I had nothing. I was a captain in the Air Force, and then finally I got back to the States. They took the captaincy away from me because I didn't have enough time in grade. You had to have 2 years in grade to become a captain, and at 3 months they made me a captain. Colonel G, he loved me, that guy. Then he wanted to make me a major. I said, F you, send me home. But I was doing the job of a major. Group lead navigator was a major or a captain, at least captain.
What would your life have been like without that experience?
Well, I was probably going to stay in school, become an engineer or something like that, and who knows? But it was disrupted. And I disrupted it myself because I had a 5-year deferment working for the Army Ordnance Department. And they give me nothing but trouble when I try to get away to go enlist. But life goes on, I guess. And like in everything else, you got to be lucky. And you got to be well trained. I can tell you one thing, we were well trained. When we went overseas, we were trained, And there was no goof-offs there, I tell you. If you goofed off, you were dead.
Is there one experience that you look back on, and maybe it's something that we've already talked about, one experience that stands out above all the rest that somehow captures what you went through?
I'll tell you one thing. I think that trip from Gander Lake and Newfoundland to the Azores stands out in my mind as an achievement that I could never achieve, I'll tell you. It was something that I was very proud of. 2 weeks out of school, never flew more than 200 miles in one direction, and always had the radar and the skylines and everything to work with, and the proper maps to fly over the ocean with no maps or nothing, just a longitude and latitude and the stars and the sextant. And you had to work, but you were well trained. They trained you for it, and they sent you on it. But I was, to tell you the truth, when we left El Paso, Texas, to go to Kansas to pick up that B-24 bomber, I didn't even know how to get up to the nose of a 24 to get in there, into the navigation department.
A sturdy aircraft.
Oh yeah, but it didn't fly. It didn't fly on paper. It defied the rules of aerodynamics because of the narrow Davis wing. We were out here they had the air show out here on the west at Palatine Airport, and they had a B-24 bomber and a B-17, and they were taking off. And I said to Mark, my son, I said, Mark, watch the 17. It'll be off the ground in half the runway. Now watch the B-24. Took all the runway and then some to get off the ground, because it had to get up to a high speed, 130 to 125. Sometimes depend on the wind, you could get off at 125, but no less, because it had a narrow Davis wing. The whole wing was gas tank. There's another thing. The Liberator bomber, the whole wing is gas tank. So if you got if a piece of flak or a phosphorus fire hit you, you were dead. The Germans would shoot off those phosphorus bombs or 55 millimeter shells full of phosphorus, and they'd spray out over, and then they'd come down on top of us. They had everything going for them.
So how does it make you feel when people, and I'm sure it's occurred, where a random stranger will come up to you, knowing your background, and thank you? How does that make you feel?
I tell you, it hasn't happened just recently. In the last 3 or 4 months, where they've come up, where the kids are coming out of school and talking about World War II. And I had a lady, I was sitting at Dominic's having a cup of coffee while my wife was shopping, and a lady come up to me and says, "Sir, thank you for what you did, and can I buy you a cake?" I said, "No, thank you very much. I appreciate you saying thank you." And so she comes back about 15 minutes later, hands me a dozen roses, gives me a kiss on the cheek. "Thank you." I started to cry like a baby. First time that's ever happened. Then I was sitting at Gibson's having dinner, and a young man comes up, and his father saw me, and his father said, "Go say hello to I had my pen on me. Go say hello to the officer over there." And he comes out and shakes my hand. "Do you mind if I sit down?" He says, "Sir, I was a navigator. He's going to be a navigator in the Air Force, and he just was leaving to become a navigator, going to school." And we spent talked to him. I told him what to expect and what he should concentrate on, and he was very happy, and I was happy, and it made me feel good. So I could talk to somebody like that. I feel I could even get in a plane now and navigate it.
Well, I was gonna ask you, you know, if you mentioned the air show and watching the B-24 use all of that runway to lift off, what is it like to be on the ground watching as opposed to being inside?
Yeah. Well, watching you can breathe easy, but inside you pray. Like I told you, we had we stripped those bombers down, and the colonel said, "You afraid to get off the ground?" I said, "No, not the ground. We'll get off because what we do is put full power to the plane, and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 release, and we bounce up the air. But hitting the ground with that is more important than taking off, because if you don't, of course you have to take off, but hitting the ground is more dangerous than taking off with all that weight, and you're coming in at, say, 140 miles an hour. Yeah, bringing back memories, and then some.
Good and bad.
Yeah.
A lot of good.
Oh, a lot of comradeship, I'll tell you. When we'd all get back from a mission, and we'd sit down at dinner, man, and we would sing the Air Force song and cheer, and then we'd eat and then go to bed. Like you asked me before, you were dead tired.
Well, you know, I had the opportunity as I put together the short piece for your birthday, and going through pictures of you, you know, standing by the equipment, your picture, you know, in uniform. You were a stud. I mean, you were
Yeah, I tell you, I was a young kid, and I was a good-looking kid, and the girls.
Good-looking guy with a great smile.
Yeah, and the girls used to. When we were at Lubbock, Texas, the girls would trip us and beat us to the ground. I'll tell you something else. I shouldn't say this, but on Saturday night in Lubbock, Texas, at Texas Tech, you couldn't find a place to lie down on the football field. And they told us, have fun.
So this has nothing to do with what we're talking today, but understanding your background, you spent your childhood in Dallas. Couple of years?
I was still until I was about graduated from grammar school.
Because I grew up in Dallas.
Well, I went to City Park Grammar School on Irving.
In Irving, Texas.
Yeah, no, right on Irving's Boulevard. And we lived on Acker Street. We had a home on Acker Street, and when my mother enrolled me in, I graduated. I graduated from grammar school in there, and my mother enrolled me in school when I was 6 years old in City Park Grammar School. And the kids, they were still fighting the Civil War. In fact, they're fighting the Civil War now. And they were calling me damn Yankee, and I don't know what the hell a Yankee was. But my homeroom teacher at the school fell in love with me because I was a good-looking punk. You know, in fact, I was supposed to be on television, not television, actually radio and advertising for the Board and Dairy Company, and I got diphtheria and they couldn't use me. And so she fell in love with me, and the only way she could justify it, because she was a dying Southern, I mean, she was Southern Liberales, and she named me Jackie Lee, after General Lee. Now, all through my Army career, Air Force career, it's Jack Lee.
That could have been your good Protestant name.
Yeah.
So are all of your medals and some of the memorabilia in kind of one area?
Yeah, most of them.
Why don't we go back and we'll just sort of talk about that for a while?
We're looking at the air medal on the left. This is the Liberator bomber, 4-engine bomber that I flew all my missions in.
That medal's kind of moved over, Jay.
Yeah, that one is the air medal on the left. I have 5 of those, and the Distinguished Flying Cross, which is very, very good. And then the Presidential Citation up there. This is the French Legion of Honor given us for those 2 missions we flew to Lyon, France, supplying the 5th Air Force and the partisans. One of the gentlemen that saved my life a dozen times, Milt Williams. He's the only one still alive. This is my aircraft, Lucky Miss. Oh, Purple Heart too. My grandson wrote a paper on me at school.
To me, anyone who risks his life fighting for his country is a hero. My grandfather's a hero. My grandfather's a very determined person, and when he does something that he wants to do, he takes great pride in it. And I see he got an A.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that until he's now at Champaign. And Clint Eastwood and Ronnie Reagan were playing golf in front of us, and Reagan found out that I was a navigator and Air Force man, and he gave me a ball with his presidential citation and his signature on it. 24-hour watch that the navigators were issued. This watch lost only 1 second in 90 days. It was because when you're shooting the stars, you got to have the exact time. A half a second is 10 miles. So